My wife betrayed and cheated with her coworker. And I found out after the affair partner's wife physically assaulted and exposed my wife in her office, humiliating her. I'm in desperate need of help and advice. I 28M found out that my wife 28F had an affair with her former supervisor 35M at work, who's married himself with kids. We've been married for 5 years and we're high school sweethearts. We were each other's first relationship and first everything. When we were little kids, we were even neighbors. She has always been there. We both came from broken homes, but we always had each other, and we created something different than what we grew up seeing. Or at least that's what I thought. Maybe I was just one big idiot the entire time. I still work remotely, while my wife has since gone back to being in person. There's not many women in her field, and she used to vent to me a lot that her job was more in line with a boys' club. Her affair partner, who was still her supervisor at the time, was one of the good ones, supposedly, and looked out for my wife at work. Recently, my wife received a promotion, and I was so happy for her. She was now a supervisor herself. This brought some new responsibility, such as having to take a few business trips during the year. Her first trip happened last week, Wednesday through Friday. Before she left, I told her that I'd be rooting for her from home, and she told me that she'd be leaving her heart with me and to take care of it. That's something she always says to me whenever we have to be apart. On Monday, she came home from work early. I could immediately tell that something was wrong. She looked overwhelmed, and there was a red mark on her right cheek. My wife is pale and tends to bruise easily. I asked her what happened, but she only asked me to hug her. She said she just wanted to feel my embrace. I hugged her, and after a few moments, she proceeded to say there was an incident at work. She sat me down on the couch and made the confession that has destroyed me and completely uprooted my life. She had sex with her former supervisor on the team lead trip. I couldn't even process at first. It was like I was watching it happen to someone else, or like she was going to reveal it was a cruel joke. I think I would have accepted the cruel joke over reality. I was quiet during her whole confession, not saying one word. I was just in shock. Cheating is a sensitive topic for me, as it is for a lot of people. My own family was wrecked by an affair my dad had. I'm the one who caught him cheating and told my mom. My dad and I's relationship is not good at all because he blames me for ruining the family, and he has never forgiven me. My wife saw what cheating did to my family and knew how much it tore me apart. Heck, she's seen me cry over this back when we were teens, and she comforted me. And then she turns around and does this to me? To us? Apparently, the man's own wife found out and confronted her husband and my wife at work. It was a big scene, with employees and customers all present. The woman had called my wife white trash and slapped her. After the slap, other employees started interfering, and the woman was escorted out of the building. My wife then called her older sister 30F. In her words, she said her sister scolded her and told her that she needed to tell me about the affair and that I needed to hear it from her. I still never said a word, and she asked me to please say something. The only thing I could muster up to say in the moment was I needed her to tell me what happened on the trip. She said on the second day of the trip, she went out for drinks with the other team leads and that the group stayed out late, and she felt like she needed to participate for a team bonding experience. Throughout the night, each team leader wandered off until it was only her and her former supervisor left, and they went back to his room to listen to music. He kept complimenting her and telling her how XY she was, and that if he were me, he wouldn't be able to keep his hands off her. He eventually kissed her. My wife told me she doesn't know what came over her, and that she wasn't thinking clearly, but she let him keep kissing her, which then turned to him groping her. They progressed to having sex. I didn't want any more details because I couldn't take it, and I got up off the couch, telling her to stop. She reached out to take my hand, but I moved away and told her not to touch me. She broke down crying and started profusely apologizing and begging for forgiveness, saying how it was the biggest mistake of her life, that she hates herself, and she wishes she could take it back. She kept repeating how much she loves me and only me, that the alcohol clouded her judgment. I told her she needed to leave. She needed to call her sister to pick her up. She got up from the couch, crying even more, and tried to hug me, but I moved away again. She begged me not to do this, saying all kinds of stuff like she will quit her job, give me full access to her phone, saying we'll do counseling. I couldn't keep it together. I told her if she wasn't going to leave the house, then I would. I didn't even stop to pack a bag or anything, but just went for the door. She grabbed my arm, I guess, to try to stop me from leaving, and kept pleading for me not to do this, saying after everything we've been through that this can't be the end of us. Despite everything, seeing her in that state and leaving her behind while she was crying still tore me apart because I love her. I love her more than I ever thought was possible to love someone else. But she broke me. She tossed our entire life and future away. I ended up going to my mom's house, and that's currently where I'm staying. I don't know how I kept my senses during the drive, but when I arrived, I just cried. I don't even think my mom has even seen me cry as a teen or an adult. The only person who's ever seen me cry is my wife. I did tell my mom what happened because I honestly didn't know how to keep it from her with me, showing up at her place in that way. She was brokenhearted over it. She and my wife always got along. My mom treated her like a daughter. That was their relationship. She didn't pass any judgment, but said I could stay as long as I needed and tried to offer some words of comfort. Ever since I left, my wife has been blowing up my phone with calls and texts, but I haven't answered or written back. The texts have basically just been begging me to come home and to talk with her, asking where I am, and to please not give up on us. I just feel so broken. I thought I knew what this pain was like, but it's nothing compared to experiencing it yourself. I never thought my wife would do something like this. I always had the belief that there was no coming back from cheating from me, that the relationship would be over. But now I keep thinking if I should give our relationship another chance. Go to counseling together and try to salvage the relationship. I keep thinking back to all the history we have, how much I love her, how we always felt like matching puzzle pieces, and how when I thought I had no one, she was there. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to proceed. I'm at a loss. Update. Thanks to everyone for the advice, concern, and resources. With everything going on, I haven't been able to respond to every comment or message, but they've been very much appreciated. This week has been the most excruciating. I feel like a helpless kid again who can only watch as the world around me falls apart. And I'm going through it without my wife, who has been my best friend and support. I was certain I didn't have the whole story. So yesterday I looked into contacting OBS. I knew I needed to hear what she had to say in order for me to get some clarity. She wouldn't have any agenda to lie or withhold whatever information she had from me. I found her Facebook account and wrote her on Messenger. She responded no more than 10 minutes later and offered to video call right then. I immediately replied that I was available. One look without a word, and I could tell she was going through a similar hell like me. She said that shortly after being escorted out of the workplace last Monday, she actually tried to get in contact with me, but couldn't find my details. In fact, one of the last things she said to my wife was threatening that she was going to tell me. When she was saying this, all I could think of was how my wife rushed home that day and how her sister told her that I needed to hear about the affair from her. I asked her if she knew more about what occurred during the team lead trip, or was this really just an ons, and how did she find out? What she told me confirmed my fears. The affair dates back to before the trip. Documented proof from texts that were of an intense emotional affair. All of this, OBS shared with me with screen share, and I could barely keep it together. She told me that back in January, she noticed that her husband was withdrawn and disinterested towards her. There were times she saw him texting my wife, but he would brush it off as work-related convos. The day before the trip, she went to the job to drop something off her so had forgotten, and she found him in his office with my wife, standing close together, joking and smiling. She said the whole atmosphere between them felt flirty. When they noticed her, they parted, and my wife's face looked panicked while her husband went over it altogether. She said it was then that she felt certain there was something going on between her husband and my wife. But she didn't address it because she wanted undeniable proof her husband couldn't escape from. After the trip, her so was more distant and dismissive. That night, she waited until he fell asleep and then checked his phone. She went to his text thread with my wife, where everything was there to see. Intimate texts back and forth before the trip. It started as emotional cheating. Others were of app, saying that it was impossible for him to focus at work whenever my wife was around. In these texts, it was clear that affair partner was the pursuer-aggressor toward my wife. But that doesn't really make a difference because she never shut down his advances. Some of the pre-trip texts were affair partner bashing his wife and going off about repeated miscarriages. It was just plain disgusting with how he talked about her to my wife. He kept mentioning how maybe he needed a woman like my wife. There were texts from last Thursday night with affair partner inviting my wife to join the team for drinks, and texts affair partner sent to my wife the following morning that clearly revealed that they had as ex. At this point, there were no more replies from my wife after Thursday night. I didn't think it was possible for me to hurt any worse, but here I am. Osby said it took her everything to remain calm, as she didn't want to alert her twins sleeping in the other room. But she didn't wake her husband up, nor confront him immediately. She said that in her heart she was done with him, and that for her, He had crossed a line he couldn't come back from. She said she was more angry than she'd ever been during their marriage, and that through her anger, she was set on humiliating him like he had humiliated her. So she faked her smiles and acted like everything was fine and waited until Monday, where she was going to out him at work in front of his peers, underlings, and customers. She said this confrontation had been brewing for a while now. Apparently, it was only a coincidence that my wife was at work that day as well. When OSP saw my wife with a fair partner and another employee, she decided to target my wife, too. When she went on to calling out my wife tried unsuccessfully to get her to quiet down. OBS then started saying her husband had no signs of remorse in the slightest, but only anger at her public outburst. I learned from her that a fair partner was fired the following day after the confrontation. She also kicked him out of the house and said one of the hardest things in her life was having to explain this all to her twins. I had an idea of what she meant because I saw my own mom have to do the same thing after my dad. She said that this whole ordeal showed her who her husband really was. And while her husband pursued my wife, nonetheless my wife still had a part in the affair, and that as a woman, she had no sympathy or respect for my wife whatsoever. I told her I in no way fault her for that, and that she has every right. She actually apologized to me for her husband's role in the affair. I literally was at a loss for words for a moment, and then I apologized for the part my wife played, and she said that her and I are now a part of a club we never wanted to be in, a club that our SOs forced us into. She asked me about my wife and me. I told her that I honestly didn't know what I was going to do, but that I wasn't currently staying with my wife. She wished me all the best, and I did the same to her, and before ending the call, we exchanged numbers, so if we ever wanted to talk again. Every raw emotion was only heightened. I confided in my mom about what I learned, and she still didn't voice any judgment, but I could tell that she's upset with my wife. A part of me feels great happiness that a fair partner is losing everything, his job and his family, and that maybe he's out there suffering as well. But I'm not proud of that feeling. At the same time, I feel immense guilt over that because a wife is losing her husband, and children are losing their family as they know it. Those kids are in for a whole world of pain. I feel anger also towards my wife for doing this to us, for breaking our vows, and for putting my health in jeopardy. We did have sex after she returned from the trip, and the post-trip texts hint that protection wasn't used. I do know I should resume contact with my wife regarding the information OBS has provided me with and demand a timeline. But at the same time, I feel even more lost than I was when I made the original post. I feel like I'm just drowning here. Update. I want to start this off by thanking everyone for the advice, kind words, and support. Everything is appreciated. Admittedly, there's been some comments messages hard to see, but they're nevertheless needed, and I feel like they're coming from a good place. 1 week since D-Day. After talking with OBS, I've been trying to process everything. I haven't been sleeping well. To know that my wife, who I've known since we were 5 years old and started dating at 13, who had been my best friend confidante, had an affair. I feel like an empty shell. When I step outside, I feel like people know, and they're secretly laughing at me. Has anyone else felt that way? I decided to break NC to request a timeline. The plan was to go Sunday without warning, and if I'm being honest, I wanted to give her another chance to be truthful and to see how she'd been living. Some mentioned a fair partner could be at our home. It was painful to consider that she could be defiling the home we shared together for most of our adult lives, but after everything, it wasn't far-fetched. I texted OBS for a description of a fair partner's car and why I needed it. She sent the info. I made the drive back and looked out for a fair partner's car, but it wasn't around. I went into the house to find my WW by herself on the couch. She was stunned to see me. Her eyes were red and a little puffy, like she'd been crying. I hated seeing her this way, and I had this urge to comfort her. But then I recalled how we got here in the first place. It was confusing almost, not acting to help her. My WW called my name with a sense of relief and moved toward me, but I asked her to stop. She did then say that she'd been worried about me and thanked me for coming back home. I asked if a fair partner had been in the house. She said no. But I searched the house, and she followed after while promising that he was never here. I didn't find anything that suggested a fair partner was. I asked if she had any contact with him. She admitted he left a voicemail, but she didn't call back and blocked his number. She showed proof of this. We sat at the dining room table to talk. At this point, I tried not getting lost in emotion. I told her I would like for her to answer my questions. She agreed to do so, and that she's just glad I'm here, and that we're talking again. I asked her if she had quit, and she said she hadn't yet. But on the same day a fair partner was fired. She was suspended for a week pending an investigation. Tomorrow she'll learn the outcome. She said affair partner's firing was the sole reason she hadn't quit like she offered. I asked her to tell me about the affair. She said she already did, but I told her that we both know there's more to the story. And now I'm giving her another chance to be honest with me. And if I were to discover any lies, then there would be no going back. She was quiet for a few moments, and then she nodded. She revealed the extent of the affair, and it matched with what OBS showed me. The affair started emotionally, and that there had been some flirting at work. But she insisted they only had sex one time. She didn't go into every single detail that OBS showed, but she revealed the EA. She didn't say anything I didn't already know, but it was like a fresh wound opened up after hearing her confirm it. I was left in silence again, like how I was on D-Day. She asked me to please tell her what I was thinking. I asked her why would she do this. She saw my family's history firsthand, but still did this. Was she unhappy in any way? At this, she broke down crying and said she has never been unhappy with me or our marriage. That she loves me and our relationship is the most important thing to her. I said her actions speak louder. She said she doesn't know why she got involved in the affair, but she never wanted to hurt me, and it kills her. That by the time they had sex, she made so many mistakes and realized she was in too deep and didn't know how to pull herself out, especially when affair partner had championed for her at work. She told me that the affair was no failure on my part, and that it's all on her. I asked if she felt forced by affair partner, to which she said that everyone loved him, and that, as far as I know, there was a boys' club mentality. She said that she froze up during sex. She just kept saying sorry, and if she could take it all back, she would. My emotions were slipping, so I tried to speed it along and asked why she would have sex with me, which she initiated. She only said that she felt so disgusting and guilty that she wanted to wash it away by being with me again. I told her she didn't wash anything away. All she did was endanger me to ease her conscience. She didn't have a response. She only kept crying. I then asked her if she ever planned to tell me. She said she wanted to confess and was afraid because she knew how cheating was a deal-breaker for me. She thought she could fix it by stopping the affair and not communicating with affair partner outside of work. She said she stopped texting him after they had sex. I asked her if affair partner wore a condom, and she revealed sex wasn't planned, and that because she froze up, she didn't mention it to affair partner. She said that she will never forgive herself, and that I have every right to hate her, and that seeing the pain she caused me and being without me with NC has extremely scared her. She pleaded with me to give our marriage another chance, but I compared her to my dad, and that remark stung deep. She said she was nothing like him, but I asked, where's the difference? She tried to take my hand, but I moved my hands out of the way. She said that we're not my parents, and it's different for us, and to please tell her that we can make it over this, after everything we've been through. I couldn't say that. I then made my timeline request. It seemed to terrify her, but I insisted, and she agreed. I told her that we needed to get tested. She agreed without an issue. I was barely keeping my emotions in order, so I went to go pack a bag and some essentials. She begged me to stay, saying that she'd stay on the couch, but she just wanted me to be home. I said that I couldn't stay here with her. When I was leaving, she said she loves me so much, and that she's sorry for everything. I didn't say anything in return. I couldn't. She then asked where I was staying, and I admitted that I was with my mom. She asked if I could tell my mom something but said I couldn't be her go-between. I know she's also worried about her relationship with my mom. As I said before, she treated her like a daughter. WW never really had her mom in her life. There was neglect. She asked if she could hug me, but I said no and left. Now, I'm just looking at my options. She told more of the truth this time, but reality is still reality. I don't know what to make of her statement that she froze up. I also don't know if I'm ready to tell other people about the affair because I feel so embarrassed. Anyway, right now I'm trying to take it day by day, and would greatly appreciate any advice on how to proceed from here. Update. I received the timeline from my wife of her affair with her coworker. Hi, everyone. Thanks for the continued support. Here's an update on the situation. I've been keeping light contact with my WW. She texted that she was going in for the post-suspension meeting. An hour later, she said she was fired. We discussed the STD tests. We'll be going on Thursday. Last night, she FaceTimed me. I was hesitant to answer. She still looked the same as Sunday. She said she had finished the timeline, and I told her I'd be coming over tomorrow. She said that writing the timeline was one of the hardest things she has done, only second to our current separation. She was trying not to cry. Usually, I'd comfort her, but I couldn't. My mom offered to come with for support. She said she wouldn't go into the house, but she'd wait in the car. I think she was worried about me driving back. I accepted her offer, and I drove us. My WW was waiting for me inside with a 2-page document. She was anxious. I sat by her on the couch. It was like today again. I wanted her to read the timeline. She was thrown by this. The fear was clear on her face. Her and I were always so attuned, and her fear heightened my dread. I said I needed her to do this for me, and after a moment she did. It was crushing on today. It was crushing when I talked to OBS. It was crushing when WW admitted the E. And it was still crushing. The timeline covered from WW being hired today. How her and affair partner's friendship began. The culture at work. How affair partner presented himself as different. While he joked with the guys, he didn't go along with the nonsense and kept his department intact. He started looking out for her and went out of his way to get her SIM credited. A friendship was established. Affair partner started venting about his home life, and she was a listening ear to him. He would ask about hers. He seemed to be probing. She told him about her mom relapsing. He grew bolder in venting. She wished she'd spoken up, but was blinded by her view of affair partner being one of the good ones. At work, co-workers mocked her of being affair partner's favorite, etc. She didn't confide in me about this because at the time I was getting into it with my dad. She felt like her problems were petty in comparison, so she didn't want to throw it on me. She vented to affair partner. This started the EA, and now affair partner was being told about issues that I wasn't. This hurt to hear because we always kept an open line of communication with each other. There wasn't anything we couldn't talk about. No matter what I had going on, she was my first priority, and I would have been there for her. We were a team. Affair partner started flirting at work texts, and she started flirting back. He told her that a promotion was coming up, and he wanted to make sure that she was a contender as she was one of the best employees. After the promotion, he hugged her. That was their first physical contact, and he joked that she could thank him some other time. When the team went out for drinks, they broke off to their own table, and he vented about OBS and his kids. They went to his room under the pretense of listening to music and taking the party upstairs to celebrate her promotion. He turned on music and talked about the view from his room. He pulled her to him and started dancing a bit. He kept saying how as XY she is if he were me. He wouldn't be able to keep his hands off of her. He eventually kissed her, and she froze up. Her mind shut down. Her mind and emotions weren't there. Affair partner started groping her all over, and it went to SX. She didn't orgasm, and affair partner finished quickly. He told her, that was a hell of a celebration. He eventually fell asleep. She quietly got out of bed and left for her room. She immediately went into the shower and repeatedly scrubbed her body, but she still felt filthy. She didn't sleep that night and just cried as she thought of me. The next morning, there was only one meeting, but she didn't go. Affair partner called and said he was disappointed he missed out on a second go in the morning. She was barely replying, and he asked if something was wrong, but she lied that she was hungover. He told her that he'd cover for her at the meeting. He tossed the idea of them staying behind another day. She was afraid to tell me about what happened, because she knew how cheating was a deal-breaker for me. She made a plan to stop the affair by not communicating with affair partner beyond work. She came home early, even more wrecked with guilt as we reunited, but she acted like nothing was wrong. On Saturday morning, she initiated SX in an attempt to wash away what she did, but she only felt worse since she'd been with affair partner without a condom. On Monday, affair partner pulled her aside, and she told him that they should leave what happened in the past, and that it was a mistake. But affair partner was refuting until another employee approached. After the confrontation, she called her sister in a state of panic. My sil found out the same day I did. There's more to the timeline, but I summed it up. While reading, she cried and took short breaks to catch her breath. I wasn't holding up much either. She touched my hand as she repeatedly apologized, but I removed my hand from under hers. I had to get out of there, so I asked for the timeline and left. Inside my car, I broke down, and my mom, without saying a word, embraced me. I sat there crying in her arms like I was a little kid again. I was in no condition to drive, so she drove us back. My WW kept calling, texting, and blowing up my mom's phone. But I told my mom that I would handle it. I eventually called back. She asked if I was okay, but I said, why in the world would I be okay? She apologized and said I was right. She was no better than my dad. She said doing the timeline was like confronting herself, that it gave her clarity. She said she loves me and has only ever loved me. That before we got together, we were friends who became best friends, and every moment with me she treasures. She said she hates herself for every choice she's made at the job, and that she knows nothing she's going through compares to what IOBs and kids are. She said nothing she's lost means anything compared to losing me. She asked if I could find it within me to reconcile. And she'll spend forever trying to show me what our relationship means to her and do the work to make things right again. I couldn't respond, and my right hand was literally shaking. I only said that I needed some space. Do I regret hearing the timeline? Not really, because I needed to have it. Sometimes a decision can be hard for me, something I pick apart. But once I make one, I do my best to stick to it. That's kind of always been my way. I have always loved my WW. We have been through a lot together, and I don't want to lose our relationship. But I still look at what's happened, and I'm just broken. I do think IC would go well. I did IC for a year after my dad's affair. I also still want to go the polygraph route as well. I know I need to have my WW take a pregnancy test, too. She's on birth control, but still. I would appreciate any thoughts and advice on this whole situation. Update. I discovered some more info after my wife's timeline of her affair with her coworker. Hi, everyone. First off, thanks to everyone who reached out and provided advice or support. Everything is appreciated. Here's an update. Since my WW read her timeline, there hasn't been a moment. It hasn't been heavily weighing on me, and I still haven't slept well. I've read the timeline at least once every day, and with every reread I experience a variety of emotions. Sadness, hurt, anger, and embarrassment. Sometimes I can't even form how I'm feeling into words. I don't think that she was doctoring it up. Everything does match with what OBS showed me. I think the timeline was impactful for her. The affair is the affair, but I do believe that affair partner preyed on her. I'm angry I was unaware of it and didn't protect her. When we were 17, there was this bad incident with her mom, and she came over to my house, and I held her in my arms, and I promised I would always protect her no matter what. And I feel like I failed with affair partner. I didn't see his motives. I only took her word. On Friday night, I texted OBS to see if we could talk. I wanted her input and to see how Sheth twins were doing. She called. She had just put her kids to bed and said how rough it's been on the kids and that she's just been trying to focus on them. She said that it's going to be a bitter divorce. Affair partner's acting like the wronged party and puffed up with himself. He hasn't apologized or anything. He's living at an extended stay. She changed the locks, so he couldn't come and go. I asked about affair partner's history, past cheating or abuse of power. She knew where I was getting at. She has suspicions of past infidelities over the years that a woman always knew. But she never had proof he couldn't deny. She believes he grew overconfident sloppy with my WW. There was one allegation 5 years ago at affair partner's previous job. A coworker reported him to HR for retaliating against her after she refused in advance, but nothing came of it. She was viewed as a difficult employee who was frequently late and dismissed as bitter after affair partner wrote her up. OBS, she ignored the warning signs because she was pregnant. There wasn't another allegation, and he had a great reputation. The info took me a minute to process. I did ask if affair partner gave her a timeline. She said she didn't care for one because she just wants a divorce. She asked if I had made a decision yet with my WW, and I told her that I hadn't. She suggested her attorney when I was ready, or just for a consultation. I took the info and thanked her. We talked for a little bit about life post-day before hanging up. I felt more anger toward affair partner. I do believe he set his sights on WW, but she still had an EA that only grew, and I just feel so deeply hurt, lost, and betrayed. I really hate all of this. Yesterday, I still couldn't get what OBS said off my mind. My SIL called me, and the tone of her voice was troubling. She was worried about my WW. She didn't believe she was doing well and had not been eating. She asked if I had talked to her at all, but I hadn't since Thursday. So far, my WW has been respecting me, asking for some space. This did not please me to hear in the slightest. I hated the idea of my WW being in this way, and every day with NC or not seeing her has been extremely hard for me. She asked if I could try talking with her, but she didn't have to because I had already decided on going to see her. On the way over, I stopped at this local restaurant, which my WW loves, and ordered her usual meal to go. And then I went straight to our home without prior warning. Admittedly, a part of me wondered if I might find a fair partner there this time around. But again, his car wasn't around. I entered the house, and my WW was lying on the couch. The TV was on, but she wasn't watching it. She looked like she was going through hell. Conflicting emotions hit me. 1. Some choices of hers brought this on, and 2. I wanted to comfort her and promise her that everything would be okay. She sat up surprised to see me. She moved to get up, I assume, to hug me, but she stopped herself. I showed her the food and told her that I needed her to eat something. This caught her off guard, and she said that I didn't have to do this, but I said I wanted to. I helped her get settled at the table, got her something to drink, and she started eating her meal. I asked if she heard from affair partner, or if he's been to the house, and she said no. I asked if I could see her phone. Without any hesitation, she handed it over to me. While she ate, I spent some time searching her phone. There weren't any new convos with affair partner, and his number was still blocked. I waited until she was finished eating before I said anything up that could distract her. I mentioned that her sister had called, and this threw her off. She promised that she didn't ask her to do that, and she's been trying to respect my space request. But I said that it was okay, and that I wasn't bothered by the call. She said I shouldn't have to rush home to take care of her. But I said our vows say otherwise, and they still matter to me. She starts tearing up and says that she ruined us, that she ruined me, and that our relationship was the very best part of her life and meant everything to her. She said that she's angry with herself, disappointed in herself, that I only ever loved and trusted her. But she hurt and betrayed me in the way that would tear me apart the most, and she'll never forgive herself. At this point, I don't know what happened, but her words had hit me deeply, and I just broke down. She kept saying that she didn't deserve me, and she just kept tearing herself to shreds. The last thing she said was that I must regret being with her. For the first time since today, I cut in and said that my whole life has been wrecked. But she knew that I don't regret her. I listed how many times she saved me, and that I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for her. I reminded her about the day we first met at the neighborhood playground when we were 5, or how at 13 I admitted my feelings for her, and the entire time I was nervously stumbling over my words, and she held my hand to reassure me. Even then I knew I wanted to be by her side. How, when I proposed and she said yes, I was beyond excited for us to start our lives together in that way. I never wanted to part from her, that she was it for me, and that never once changed before today. We just cried without saying another word. I tried to gather myself, then told her that I needed to go. As I was leaving, she thanked me for coming over, then said that she understands my need for space, and she'll accept whatever consequences come her way. But that she's not giving up on us, and that she's going to start looking into IC. I only nodded. I have my first IC scheduled for Monday. But I feel like I'm nowhere closer to knowing how to proceed, nor do I feel any less lost. Every emotion you could possibly imagine is just wrecking me, and I feel like I'm trapped in a maze. I would appreciate any advice. Update. My wife had an affair with her coworker. Hi, everyone. This is my first time posting here. I was told that this sub could be good for me with my ongoing situation. I have 5 posts detailing my ordeal, and I'll be providing links to those at the end of this post for better context. But here's a brief overall summary. I-28M found out that my WW28F had an EA that turned into a PA with her coworker 35M. Affair partners married himself with twins. Today for me is officially 3 weeks ago. The affair came out after affair partner's STBXW confronted him and my WW at work, which caused a big scene in front of other employees and customers. She and I have been married for 5 years, but we've been together for 15 years in total. We met when we were 5 years old, remained neighbors growing up, and started dating at 13. We've been together ever since. We were each other's first relationship and first everything. We both came from broken homes. My own family was wrecked by an affair my dad had, and I'm the one who caught him cheating and told my mom. My relationship with my dad is not good at all because he blames me for ruining the family, and he has never forgiven me. My WW's broken home consisted of her alcoholic mom and neglect. But we always had each other, and we strived to create something different than what we grew up seeing. My WW has profusely apologized, has given me a detailed timeline, and has asked me if I could find it in myself to reconcile. Ever since today, I've just been broken and feel like I'm drowning. I left our home, and I've been staying with my mom. I went from having NC with my WW to light contact. I haven't been doing well. Apparently, it's been the same way for my WW. My WW has said that she understands my need for space, and she'll accept whatever consequences come her way, but that she's not giving up on us, and that she's going to start looking into IC. I actually had my first IC today. This is all one summary, so I do hope you're able to read my 5 previous posts for the whole story. I always said cheating would be a deal breaker for me, but I don't know anything anymore regarding all of this. I hate feeling so helpless again. I'm here today to ask the community, what has reconciliation looked like for you? What has it entailed? Would it display a lack of boundaries if reconciliation was offered after it was already stated cheating was a deal breaker? Could any boundary be taken seriously after that? I would appreciate not just answers to these questions, but any input, advice, and perspectives. Update. The Mind movies have begun, and an update on my WW's health. Hi, everyone. Thanks again for the insightful advice, support, and sharing your stories on my last post. It really meant a lot during this time. There's been some developments since the last time I posted, so I thought I'd provide an update. Last night was a particularly rough night for me. Out of nowhere, my mind started playing Mind movies of my WW app, so that was hell in a new form. Watching TV couldn't get my mind off of it. Reading couldn't get my mind off of it. Anything I tried, really, didn't work. Last Monday was my first IC session. I was nervous about it. If I'm being honest, that nervousness hasn't entirely left me. But I think the first session went okay, and I'm comfortable so far with the therapist's style. For right now, I have 2 sessions per week. I'm still on a leave of absence from work, so I'm trying to make the most of it. My next session is tomorrow. There's been some progress with my WW following through on seeking IC for herself. Originally, she had told me that she was searching over the weekend, and that yesterday morning she had a general conversation with a therapist over the phone. That same day, she texted me the name and contact details of the one she was leaning toward. I haven't had much contact with my WW since we saw each other last Saturday. It's been some text back and forth. Admittedly, I have been concerned due to her not doing well and not eating. I know some might say that I shouldn't care at this point in time, but I do care. I haven't been doing so well myself since today, but I just can't help but worry about her. Just the thought of her this way hurts me even more. I want her to be better again. I want to tell her that everything's going to be okay again, but I can't do any of that. I've had some conversations with my SIL, and from what she told me, there hadn't been much improvement. This morning, I received a FaceTime call from my WW. There wasn't much difference from how she looked last Saturday. She tried to mask it with a little smile, but I wasn't fooled by it. She used to have the most bright, infectious kind of smile. She would literally just smile for no apparent reason other than just to smile. We used to joke about it sometimes. Seeing her on the FaceTime call was no less heartbreaking. All I could think of was how different things were only just a few weeks ago. And now everything's changed. Everything's broken. And I just sit and wonder how we ended up here. And I know the answer to that. The affair. I'm just so sad and upset. And a part of me feels like someone should pay for what's happened to my family and Obbs's family. Does that even make sense? Has anyone else felt this way before? I don't know. Maybe a lot of people are already paying for it. Obbs, her kids, and myself. I think my WW is paying for it now too. I asked her what was going on, and she told me something had happened, which she was relieved about. She was going to just text it, but decided to try calling at the last second. Her period started today, so that news eliminated any potential pregnancy with affair partner concerns. I thanked her for letting me know. We were both quiet for a moment, and then I broke the silence. We started talking about a variety of things: her not really eating, her mental state, her employment status, and her going to IC. She said that my concerns shouldn't be on her right now, but I made her promise to start eating regularly, and she agreed that she would try. I also mentioned that she should really start making movement on IC, and not just because she thinks it could save our relationship, but I needed her to do so for herself. Despite whatever becomes of our relationship, I do think IC will serve her well. She promised that she had been seriously looking into IC, and that everything she said before wasn't empty words. I asked her if she was looking at anything in regards to new employment. She said she had been looking at a few job listings, and that my sister had also sent her some listings that she spotted. The jobs my WW has been looking at are some in the field she was in, and also some customer service jobs, but she hasn't applied for anything yet. I asked if she was covered financially, and she said she still had some money saved that'd help with her being unemployed. She asked how I was doing, and I simply said everything she could imagine, but 10 times worse. I wasn't trying to do some purposeful jab at her, but it was the truth. In fact, the truth was I was feeling worse than that. She said that every time I check in on her, or provide some verbal support, even after what she's done, that she feels even more guilty, but she feels like she deserves every ounce of those feelings. I didn't really know what to say to that at the time. But before I could say anything, she reiterated her promise to seek IC. She mentioned something that surprised me. She name-dropped a book that I've seen a few people on here recommend to me. How to Help Your Spouse Heal from Your Affair by Linda J. McDonald. She hadn't purchased it yet, but said she thought it would be good for her to read. Shortly after that, we ended the call. I sent a text to my SIL, asking her to keep an eye on her sister as much as she could during this time, and to update me. This afternoon, my WW texted me that she had made the appointment with the therapist she was telling me about. Her first session is this Friday. So at least that process is officially beginning on that for her. All in all, not much has changed for me. I absolutely dread the thought of another bout with the mind movies. Does anyone have any advice on combating those? I lost that fight last night. Would it even be a good idea for my WW to read the book now? Again, I would appreciate any advice or perspective anyone has to offer. Update. Hi, everyone. It's been a whirlwind since my last post, to say the least. Thank you to everyone who reached out with kind words and to check up on me. I honestly wasn't expecting the show of community I have received from this subreddit. It's all very much appreciated. So, it's nearly a month since D-Day for me. A lot has happened since then, and it still seems surreal in many ways. In one way, it feels like D-Day was 1,000 years ago. Like the days have felt like weeks, and the weeks have felt like months. But then, on the other hand, D-Day seems like it happened only yesterday. The daily hell of mind movies have been persisting. The mornings didn't used to be so bad, because I had a few moments before I realized my WW wasn't with me, and then reality came crashing down on me. But I had a mind movie yesterday morning. I've talked with my therapist about them, but it hasn't made the movies any less persistent or painful. These mind movies are like you're forced to watch a movie you don't want to see. You can't pause it, turn it off, or walk away from it. It's just on, and you have no choice in the matter. I go back to work this Monday. Honestly, I'm kind of worried about reporting back. Even though I work remotely, it still requires the same focus, and I worry how the mind movies could affect me. It's a fear of mine, the possibility of one coming on during work. I don't really know what to expect. Saturdays have been some of the worst nights. Before D-Day, Saturday nights were at-home movie nights for me and my WW. We've always been big film buffs. That's what started that tradition. As Saturdays come and go since D-Day, it's just an aching reminder. Apparently some music and dancing are a trigger for me now. I tried cooking the other day to keep my mind occupied. Cooking is a joy of mine. Well, music came on from the TV, and it triggered me. My WW and I used to cook dinner together, and we'd usually have music playing. We'd slow dance to a song at times. I don't know what happened, but suddenly all I could think of was my WW sharing a dance with a fair partner in that hotel room. It all caught me off guard. It's like a tarnished memory, almost, and it hurts. I think IC has been going well so far, more so than it did for the year I went when I was a teen. Back then, I bounced around between a couple of therapists, but I think I found the right fit for me at the start this time around. Sometimes he speaks less and just listens. Other times he's asking more questions. Something he has told me is that healing is not going to be linear. We've talked some about the affair and my relationship with my WW. He said that the affair wasn't my fault, nor did I have any control over it. I was in the dark, and it was out of my hands. But what I do have control over is deciding where I go from here. Admittedly, I gave some pushback on that because I don't feel in control of myself emotionally. I feel lost in the wind. But he told me that despite what's going on around me, the next step in how I proceed from here is my sole decision. He described R as a gift only I could make and offer. My WW has been going to IC herself now. She's never been to therapy before, so after her first session, I was curious about how it went. I texted her about it, and she said it was new to her, but reiterated that she's committed to the process. I know my WW has started reading How to Help Your Spouse Heal from Your Affair. I've been reading some of the book as well, and honestly, it has made me feel validated and covers a range of emotions that I've been grappling with. My SIL updated me on my WW. She's been eating more regularly again, but it's still a struggle. This NC to light contact for space thing, while still having a desire to talk with her and wanting to see how she's doing, has been one of the most difficult experiences I've ever dealt with. Something I've been weighing is whether or not me and my WW should tell others about the affair. I've had a lot of mixed emotions about it. I've been weighing the pros and cons, but I've been leaning away from it. We only have a small circle around us, and I don't really see the value of anyone else knowing outside of my mom and Sil. Those are the people involved with us the most. My dad has no involvement, nor has he ever shown support. He'll just most likely give a speech on glass houses and all that mess. My Mill also isn't much involved with us, although she's been more of a presence than my dad. The relationship between my WW and my mom has been weighing on me, too. Prior to D-Day, they always had this firm mother-daughter relationship. My WW calls my mother Mom. She hasn't even called her own bio mom that in a very long time. My mom has been devastated about the affair. She's dealing with a betrayal of her own with my WW, from what my dad did to our family. And now she sees it happening to me. She still hasn't outright said anything against my WW. But I know she's hurting too. And I know that the relationship she and my WW shared has taken a severe blow. I don't know if that bond can recover, or at least be somewhere near that same level of closeness. I know my WW feels and knows that too, and that loss deeply hurts her. They haven't had any contact since D-Day. Maybe it's not my place to worry about it right now, but I do. I can't help it. And it's a part of the anger I feel. Me and others having to deal with the pieces of something we never chose. Even with Obs and her twins, and I well know all the pain those kids are already going through and will experience. It's like watching history repeat itself in a way. Pain. That's all that's going around. I believe my WW's in pain too. And I just keep thinking if only she would have considered that before the affair, maybe things would be different right now. I wanted to give an update on a variety of things that have been going on. Has anyone had to deal with the fallout of a relationship between a WS and a family member who were close before D-Day? How have you coped or been coping with triggers or fond moments that are now tarnished? I ask for advice and perspectives on the situation. Update. Hi, everyone. A lot has happened since I last posted. I've been trying to get my bearing on it all. I've been seeing the comments, and the input is very much appreciated. I'm still working on replying. Here's a new update. Since my last post, I've gone back to work. This was my first week back, and juggling that with 2 sessions a week of IC has been a delicate balance. It's been weird being back. I felt like a fish out of water for a while, but I did fall back into a bit of the rhythm. There were times where my focus slipped. I guess it's going to take some time getting readjusted with everything else going on. But being back at work did keep my mind occupied in a way. I'm thankful no mind movies or triggers have come on at work so far. Last Saturday night was particularly difficult. I was scrolling through the TV guide, and Singin' in the Rain was on. Just the title took me to a place. It's one of me and my WW's favorite movies. She used to quietly sing along with it whenever we watched. She would claim to anyone that she can't sing, but she has a beautiful voice. It was a lot, and before I knew it, I started crying. Out of nowhere, my mom's dog came up to me and rested its head against me. He sensed my distress and was there to provide some comfort. Dogs are a true gift and are always there when you need them. It's been hitting me about how much I miss the little things, such as hearing my WW sing. I used to joke with her that I'd be the first one online buying tickets to her concert. On Tuesday night, as I was going over this work project, I received an unexpected FaceTime call from my WW. When I answered, she looked agitated. I asked her what had happened, and she told me that a affair partner had emailed her. I questioned her on it because I was under the impression that a affair partner was blocked. She said that it hadn't crossed her mind to block his email, too, and that she was about to block his email. But she first wanted to send a rejection response back to him and thought it'd be best if I'd review it. She said that she knows the work of confronting a affair partner and shutting any door he tries to open falls on her. But she just wanted to be transparent with me and to shut a affair partner down with my full knowledge and approval. She apologized for bringing me into it and said that she has no right to ask for my support. But I cut her off right there and told her that I appreciated what she was doing. I think her immediately coming forward to me about the email did mean something to me because, with me being gone from our home, she could have easily kept me in the dark about it or replied without me knowing. That and being given a say in her reply to a affair partner. I feel like I never factored in during the affair, like I wasn't even a blip on the radar. Sometimes I think, well, hell, did I ever cross your mind while this was going on? Did you ever second guess because of me? My WW showed me the email from her tablet. What I read made my blood boil. Between the time affair partner sent the email and the time it took her to call me, only a minute had passed. She said that she was disgusted by the email and that she sees through his behavior in a way she hadn't before. I don't know where to begin with a affair partner's email. I only ever grow more disgusted with a affair partner. In the email, he just went on and on about my WW blocking his number and if I had made her do that. He tried to fish what was the status of our relationship since D-Day, and of course trashing Obs some more, complaining about how she kicked him out and that she's being a see you next Tuesday about the divorce. He should use the actual word, but I won't because it's a word I choose not to use. He wrote that my WW should know by now that he has her back, saying he would like to see her and that she should come over to his room at the extended stay. My WW wrote back an unforgiving reply. She said that she chose on her own accord to block him. And as she told him on D-Day, she didn't want to continue things. She said as far as his divorce goes, he deserves whatever he gets the same way she'll deserve the same thing. That anything they're experiencing is nothing compared to what their respective spouses and families are dealing with. She said she hated who she was with, and that she wants him to leave her alone and not contact her anymore. After she finished and reread her reply to me, I gave my approval. She sent it, and then blocked his email address. We talked for a little bit afterward. Nothing really about affair partner, but about how each other were doing. She said that I shouldn't be concerned about her, but I told her that I was. She said that she'll never forgive herself for bringing this on to us, and that we were each other's safe haven, and she made a mess of everything. That she knows words aren't enough, and that the trust has been broken. But she means everything she has said, and she hopes that it'll show through her actions. She says that she hates that she had a part in uprooting so many lives, and she just genuinely hates herself. I stopped her from continuing because, despite the immense hurt and betrayal I feel, hearing her say that ripped me apart inside. My WW has a little garden at home. Gardening was something she picked up during lockdown. I asked her how the plants were doing, and she said that she was struggling to find comfort in it like she usually did. But they were doing well. She showed me the newest plant that has certainly grown since I left on D-Day. Before we ended the call, she asked if we could talk again, but I told her that I wasn't sure. At the time, I couldn't promise it, but I couldn't stop thinking that maybe a meet-up in a natural public space wouldn't be the worst idea. There's a local park near us that has this lake. It's a pretty quiet and relaxing place. We used to go there sometimes. Later that night, I texted her about meeting up at the park. She responded, yes, no more than 10 seconds later. From there, we agreed to meet up at the park the following day at 6 p.m. To say that I was nervous after solidifying the plans would be putting it mildly. I didn't know what to expect anymore, whereas before D-Day I was so certain regarding her and me. I originally included us meeting up yesterday, but I kept running into errors with including it in this post. I had to end up separating them. So I'm going to make a follow-up post detailing our meetup very soon. I was also wondering if I should provide the affair partner's email to OBS. I wasn't sure if it was the right idea or something unnecessary that would lead to more hurt for her. I appreciate any advice that can be offered. Update. Hi, everyone. Here's my follow-up post for the meetup with my WW. Leading up to leaving for the park, I felt like my emotions were thrown into a tornado. I didn't know what to expect. I was overthinking and second-guessing everything. I thought it would be best if I arranged some safe topics for me and my WW to discuss. I also prepared to cut the day short if needed. My WW beat me to the park. She was already waiting in the parking lot when I drove up. I just took a deep breath before I even got out of my car. I prepared to cut the meetup short if it proved to be too much. We actually got out of our cars at the same time, and she came to meet me. I could immediately tell that she was anxious, too. We kind of awkwardly welcomed each other. I did get the sense she was self-conscious about her appearance. I complimented her. It slipped out without a second thought. She looked beautiful. I feel like that's a contradiction due to the betrayal and immense hurt I feel daily from her. I think she was caught off guard by my compliment. She had this shocked look on her face, and she thanked me. I suggested that we'd go for a walk around the lake, and she was up for it. On our way to the pathway, there was this shaved ice vendor at the park, and I asked if she would like anything. I thought it was a good idea to help keep cool with the heat our area has been hit with. We looked at the menu, and we both selected the same flavor at the same time, strawberry. The vendor had a little chuckle at that. It reminded me of how attuned my wife and I were prior to D-Day. My WW went to pay, but I stopped her. She said that I didn't have to. But I told her that it was my treat, and besides, I was the one who invited her out. After getting our shaved ice, we walked out to the path circling the lake. At first, our walk was just silent. Kind of an awkward silence. It was a peaceful atmosphere around the lake, and there were not a lot of people out. Only about a handful of people spread out, mostly families. I think she didn't want to push me to talk. It also felt like a lot of stuff was being said in the silence, and we were both not sure where to start. Like, could we just be us again for this moment, and not address the affair elephant in the room? Despite me gathering safe topics, my mind went blank. Anything pre-planned went out the window. I walked with my shaved ice, thinking, what are we even supposed to talk about? But I broke the silence and asked how her day had been, and that stated our conversation that lasted for our entire walk. We talked about how each of our days had been so far. The nature around us, the ducks walking around and the ones floating on the lake. This guy that biked past us, and we remarked, what was he trying to prove by biking in this heat? We talked some more about her garden back at our home. She asked how I was doing with my return to work and attentively listened to every single detail of my mundane work project. She wanted to know all about it and hear what I'd been up to. I realized that we hadn't really had these kinds of talks since I left on D-Day. I couldn't deny to myself that I missed it. We even talked about neighbors. She said one of our neighbors annoyingly decided to set off fireworks late at night all weekend. It felt like us just spending time together again, and I remembered how much I used to enjoy it. I still feel conflicted about it now, as I still feel everything that the affair has unleashed on us. And then the conversation grew to our current situation. How things have changed. She had said how much better the weather had been just a few weeks ago, and I said that everything was better just a few weeks ago. It got quiet again between us. I ended up asking how her employment search was going, and she opened up about that. She's been having trouble finding new work and hasn't heard back from any particular job yet. She said that the jobs in her field were narrow and that she was still looking into customer service work. There's this new local restaurant that's preparing to open up, and they're hiring for servers and hostesses. She said she's considering applying there. I asked if she was still okay financially in the meantime, and she said that she should be right now. My WW was always good at saving money, even when she didn't have to, so I don't really doubt that. But despite what's going on, she's still my wife, and my love for her doesn't just go away. I wanted to make sure she's okay in that area. She eventually asked something that I could tell was troubling her. She asked how mom was doing. She didn't say it as, "How's your mom doing?" She said, "How's mom doing?" I spoke a little about Harry didn't try to guilt my WW with how my mom had been feeling. But I couldn't just put on a poker face and lie about it either. I knew she would have seen through it. So I gave a summed-up version. She had this dejected look on her face, and she just looked down to the ground. I brought up my mom's dog, whom my WW always loved, and I showed her some pictures I took of him. Just like talking about my mom, the dog pictures had an effect on her, and we talked about him for a little bit and how I'd been walking him through the neighborhood lately. Towards the end of it, she started tearing up, like she was fighting back tears. Something happened that stunned me. I instinctively put my arm around her shoulder. I think that simple gesture shook her too. She wasn't expecting it. I had to hold back my own tears as I thought about how messed up everything's become. For a minute, I thought I would have cut the meeting short. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to continue on, but I just tried to focus on my breathing. She apologized. I told her that she didn't need to apologize about this part, but she looked at me and just said, "Don't I?" and said that this was all on her. After that, we stood there quietly while she gathered herself. It was getting hotter outside, so we walked back to the parking lot. I walked her to her car. Before she got in, she thanked me for meeting up with her and how much she'd missed us being together like this. She then asked if we could meet up again, and I only said that maybe we could talk about it another time. She nodded and got into her car. I told her to drive safe and watched her drive off, and then I went on my own way. When I returned home, my mom asked how things had gone and how I was holding up. She only listened and gave me some words of comfort. She was distant from me, meeting my WW, and only asked if I thought I could handle it. All in all, the meetup was bittersweet. A part of me cherished it and didn't want it to end, but I felt all the pain accompanying it. It's strange. I felt rejuvenated in a sense after spending that time with my WW, but I'm also emotionally exhausted. I've been seriously considering if we should meet up again. I haven't made any plans on that yet. For right now, I am going to send Affair Partners email to OMS. Thank you to everyone who voiced their opinion on that, because I wasn't sure if I was doing the right thing. I feel like it's something she needs to know, and it could help her out with her case. Update. Hi, everyone. It's been a little bit since my last post. It's been a whirlwind since then, and if I'm being honest, I've been in quite a slump from it all, so I haven't been able to make coherent posts. I'm also sorry for the missed comments. I do want to thank everyone for the advice, support, and kind words. It's all very much appreciated, and I don't take it for granted. I seem to be running into issues with including everything that's been going on in one post, so I'll make a second post as well and attach the link here. I met up with my WW again back on the 4th. We've never done anything major on the 4th, mainly cookouts at times with my mom and Sil. Those usual plans were not on the cards this year, and my WW wouldn't be with her sister, who still had to go to work. So I thought maybe my WW and I could go see the fireworks. Admittedly, I went back and forth on the idea, but decided to follow through on it. I texted her if she would want to do so and apologized for it being last minute. I received an almost automatic read notification. She said the timing wasn't a problem, and that she would love to, and that she'd get ready. I told her to take her time. When I sent the text, there were still about 3 hours until the fireworks started. We met up downtown around an hour later, with this Starbucks being the meetup spot, and then headed for the area of the show. During our walk, I noticed that her hand twitched toward me a few times. I think out of instinct she wanted to hold my hand. This gesture didn't happen when we were at the park, but I assume that's because we had the shaved ice, so our hands were preoccupied. We could be walking out into the backyard, and we'd come out holding hands. Before D-Day, whenever we walked, we held hands. I think she wanted to, but wanted to respect my space or just wasn't sure if I'd be receptive. I don't know how my reception would have been either, and I hate that I don't. The affair has done a number in so many ways that I'm still coming to terms with. We just talked as friends would, albeit there was an awkwardness because of the reality of our current situation. It's not the same as it once was, and the truth is, it's not going to be. That realization is still hard for me. There wasn't much talking during the fireworks. We just watched them in each other's company. We actually left a little early because there was a group getting persistently obnoxious. Afterward, me and my WW walked through downtown for a little bit, heading in the direction of our cars, but not so much in a hurry. Our conversation from before the fireworks picked back up. Honestly, it felt nice and such a relief to just have her with me like that. Despite everything that I'm feeling, I've missed her so much, and it was a relief to know that at least she wasn't back at our home alone, and that I could see her with my own eyes. But it was also laced with pain and sadness. I asked if she would like to go grab a bite to eat, and she was up for it. We went to that local restaurant I mentioned in a post before that has the meal I bought for my WW when my SIL informed me that she wasn't eating. She told me that she applied for the hostess position at another restaurant that's opening up in August. She's been down about the whole job search because it hasn't been turning out so well. The jobs in her chosen field haven't been reaching out. There could be a lot of reasons why she hasn't received a response yet. But she worries if she was actually good at her job, or if it was just a fair partner pushing her along. During our convo, she received a text, which she showed me without me having to ask. It was from her sister. After we arrived back to where our cars were, we still lingered a bit as we talked. And then when we were parting, she thanked me for the night, and I thanked her for joining me. She said that she feels like she doesn't deserve these moments, but at the same time she misses me. She feels selfish for it and doesn't know how to deal with the two conflicting feelings. I told her that I understood what she meant. She asked if she could see me again, and I told her that maybe we could set something up for the end of the week or the following week. She agreed. As I was leaving, I couldn't shake this horrible feeling, knowing she was going back to being on her own. After the 4th, my marriage, the new normal, reconciliation, divorce, etc. Everything has been weighing on me. I've been overthinking and second-guessing. I hate feeling so unsure of my decisions regarding my marriage. It wasn't this way before D-Day. I've talked about this in IDOWorkHereLady, and I know the next path forward, whether it's R or divorce, depends on me. It was a particularly rough time since the fireworks. I'm going to touch on this in the follow-up post. Update. The Friday after the 4th started off on a better note. I felt less heightened and awoke to my mom's dog at my bedside. The dog has been a good comfort, even from just taking him out on walks. It's strange. Just a few months before D-Day, my WW and I were discussing getting a dog of our own. I was set on trying to take the day slow. Work was going relatively well. My lunch break came, and I went to get a little snack when, out of nowhere, this trigger hits me, and it's like I was pulled apart like cotton candy. I was literally hunched over the kitchen counter trying to catch my breath. I believe I was having a panic attack. Of course, this alerts my mom's dog. I want to say this episode lasted for a good 5 to 10 minutes. It was one of the worst triggers I've had, if it's even possible to rank them. My mom was out on a grocery run, and with the way I was feeling, I didn't want to be alone, so I called my WW. My breathing was still hitching when I did. She answered on the second ring, and I think she could immediately hear the distress in my voice because she responded with urgency right away, asking me what was wrong. When I didn't respond right back, she tried to switch to a FaceTime video call. I don't know what she saw in my face, but it looked like it shook her. I asked if she could just stay on for a bit. She nodded. It took me about another couple of minutes to settle down. My WW asked again what was wrong. I knew I finally had to tell her. I didn't see any way around it with what she had just seen, and I didn't see the point in keeping the mind movies, etc. hidden from her. I told her that it's been happening for a while now. that I've been getting mind movies of her and affair partner in the hotel room. And there's been certain things that are now triggers for me. She never said a word and just took in everything I said. I told her that this one in particular was strong. Before I knew it, I just broke down crying as I tried to explain. I managed to tell her that sometimes it feels like I'm having trouble just breathing, how I only get a few hours of sleep now, and even that's not peaceful, and that I feel like a shell. I said I couldn't bear to tell her any of this before because I feel like I've lost her, and I didn't know how to approach her with broken trust. That I feel like I'm grieving the loss of her as well. For me, it's like I lost the woman I love, my best friend, and my family. She starts crying, and she said she was so sorry she's done this to me. We just cried together for a little bit. After we both settled down, she said that she'd been speaking with her therapist about feeling the same losses and holes that I described. But she feels it's different in the sense that she's the one who imploded our relationship and family. She wants to fight for our relationship and doesn't want to be without me, but also wants to respect my space. She said our meetups have meant everything to her, and yet she fears them as well. She's afraid that one of our meetups or text calls is going to be the one where I say that it's officially over. She said she won't try to fight it when it happens because she deserves it. Hearing that wrecked me. I told her that I haven't tossed away our relationship, and that me not being home doesn't mean that I have. I told her I appreciated her efforts and for taking IC seriously. I asked if she was having any forms of mind movies or triggers too. She said she has random flashes of that night with a fair partner, and has triggers so far in terms of certain words he would say to her. I could only say that we're a messed up pair these days, and she said only repeated that she's the one who did this to us, OBS and her kids, and mom. I refuted and said this doesn't all fall back on her. That a fair partner did more of his fair share in terms of what he did to his own family. But she kept insisting that she's the one who let him into our lives in the first place. She asked what she could do to support me through the mind movies and triggers. I told her that I wasn't sure. But after some silence, I asked if she would be open to talking with each other about what we were each experiencing, like us being there for each other as friends, which was the foundation of our relationship. We can talk about it in IC and talk about it with each other. She said that she wants to help me in any way she can. But she doesn't know if it's possible or even fair for me to be trying to support her through the consequences of the affair. I knew she had her IC session coming up, so I started to end the call. But before that, I brought my mom's dog on, and it impacted my WW. She was waving and calling out to him, and he of course recognized her and was staring at the screen and wagging his tail. We shared that moment for a bit. Before hanging up, she thanked me for confiding in her about what I was experiencing, and I thanked her for being there and opening up about what she was going through. She said that I could call her anytime I wanted, and she would do her best to help me combat the movies. To be honest, I cried some more right after the call. I tried to resume work, but I was sluggish. When my mom came home, I went to help her out with the bags, and I couldn't even fake it. I think she knew what happened while she was away in terms of an episode coming on. She gave me some words of comfort. It was conflicting, and it still feels that way. On one hand, it did feel nice opening up to my WW again, but it almost felt wrong in a sense. Like a part of me was shouting, "Why are you doing this? You need to run and protect yourself." I find the two sides impossible to reconcile. One of the big betrayal hurdles for me is that she had these deep, intimate talks on her part with a fair partner. It feels so much like another violation. It was something we shared and owed to each other that she gave to a fair partner even before the work trip. If I were going to be open with her about what I've been experiencing, then I need for her to be with me as well. I need it to be a mutual thing and not her holding back. I've struggled to figure out how to give her that push. It's new territory for me. Before D-Day, we just had that open line of communication. A part of me feels, how do I know just how much to push and how to know when to pull back? Give her some time. When the AITA started, she said that she didn't want to throw her problems on me because I was going through some things. She felt like she was going to throw extra worries. Well, with that in mind, isn't it no better now if she continues to keep these things from me? Isn't that how we kind of got into this position? One thing I am certain about is that I feel like it's time for me to start being more proactive again in regards to this situation. Having the necessary conversations with my WW, and there are still questions I would like answers for. I don't know if I'm going about this the right way, or if there's even a right way to deal with things like this. But I feel like I need to try. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.